Okay, 6 o'clock. Calling Bucyrus City Council joint regular committee meeting Thursday, June 4th, 2020, 6 p.m. Members present, myself, Mark McKeever, James Mead, Bruce Truca, Doug Vogt, and Lisa Offset. Okay. I call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. Is there any public participation? Okay.
Name and address, okay.
Yes, name and address.
Name and address. My name is Deanna Williams. I live at 122 Kincora Drive. I have a few of the other residents here from the Villas at Whetstone subdivision. One of the many things we all found desirable about the villas was that there was a contractual requirement that the dwellings be built and maintained in a similar style and color as the rest of the neighborhood. The main reason that this requirement is important is because we have the knowledge that the homes will be maintained throughout the future, looking the same and being maintained. When we found out about the proposal for the rezoning, the entire neighborhood had reservations because we didn't want to end up being another eclectic neighborhood where the houses were dissimilar and falling into disrepair. We did have a meeting with Monica and Sam Best, who are the owners, and Tim Lutz, the builder. Our concerns were largely put to rest because Tim assured us that he would build only single-story houses, and it was in everyone's best interest that they all be similar in style and colors to those that were already there. As a result of his sincerity and commitment to build similar homes, we all felt a lot better. However, as Alan and I have learned during our first homeowner experience, a neighborhood is a living thing. And houses that start out similar can and will likely become dissimilar if there are not provisions in place to prevent it. For the existing homes in the villas, we take comfort in knowing there is a contractual requirement that we all maintain our homes to remain similar within the neighborhood. And each of us signed this contract and agreed to the terms and conditions in good faith that all remaining lots would be subject to these requirements. Unfortunately, by rezoning the remaining lots, these contractual requirements that we all agreed to, again, in good faith, would no longer apply to the buyers of the new homes, thus allowing the possibility of a house to be painted, let's say neon blue, sometime in the future. With this said, it is my understanding that this type of requirements can be attached to the land during this rezoning process. So there can be requirements attached to the land during this rezoning process, such that anyone who purchases a lot now or in the future will be required to build and maintain single-story homes that are of similar style and color to those already established in the neighborhood. So while we support the rezoning request that has been put forward, it is with the contingency that there be contractual requirements attached to each lot, compelling all owners to build and maintain their homes consistent with the neighborhood in both color and style, including single-story. This way, those of us already living there can rest assured that the villas at Whetstone of the future will be the neighborhood we all envisioned when we bought our homes there. Otherwise, it would be difficult to not feel like we've been duped into trusting a contract and believing in a vision that had no bearing on the actual future of our neighborhood. It is worth noting that I am not referring to an HOA or any similar obligation to a committee, but simply a deed restriction or a requirement associated with the lot in terms of consistency with the neighborhood now and in the future. Thank you for listening.
Is there anybody else? Okay. We'll proceed to Platting Committee. Call that to order at 6:04 p.m. And it's on the Kincora Drive rezoning project. We're calling for the Planning Commission. I'll read the letter. Addressed to Bucyrus City Council, Kurt Bankhauser, Council President, dated May 19, 2020, regarding items approved by Planning Commission for City Council's review. Mr. President, the Bucyrus City Planning Commission met on Tuesday, May 19, 2020. It is requested that the following items approved by Planning Commission be submitted to the appropriate council committees for review. Proposed zoning reclassification of properties from apartment residential, AR, to urban neighborhood residential, R3. Properties proposed for zoning reclassification include the undeveloped properties located at Kincora Drive, parcel ID numbers 44001222-802 and 44001222-801. See enclosed. Thank you, Mayor Jeffries. So, Landon, I'll call you up to explain.
Yes, sir.
What we have to do.
And this will probably shed some light upon what you just spoke about there. So you should have in front of you the presentation that was presented to Planning Commission for the zoning reclassification for the remaining undeveloped properties on Kincora Drive. I'll give you the high level look at it here as we did in Planning Commission. So the area request, you can see there, as it's noted, it is zoned apartment residential, which is the reason for the rezone request. Single family homes are not a permitted use in the apartment residential district. So in order to develop it with single family homes, it would have to be rezoned. And there's the R3 zoning district is what you see to the west there of what is marked as apartment residential. As Chairman McKeever said, the two lots there, there's a big parcel of land and there's this little skinny. There's two different, technically two different parcels, but it's all that big piece of land in the middle and on the east and west side of Kincora Drive. The first look is the current zoning there. Then you will see marked out with the proposed rezoning as to what would take place specifically if we only rezoned the parcels that are requested by the Besses, the property owners. And that would leave a little island of apartment residential and then a smaller island of apartment residential in the northeast corner of the development. So that's one option that you could move forward with or present at a public hearing. And the other would simply be to rezone the entire area as R3 to keep some conformity in the area. But
Here's what it looks like as he's stating. This is what he's saying the first proposal to look like, and which is, these are the existing condominiums.
Yes.
Or residents, I'm not sure which way you call them.
They're condominiums.
Or go to the whole area being changed.
I'm not sure how that works because we are a condominium association. So we do have an association, we pay dues and things like that. So I'm not sure. So basically, as it sits right now, we don't own our land. We own the structure, but not the land. And so as you drive into Kincora, there's that area in the front that's has the sign and the landscaping. And so we all contribute to keep that maintained and mowed and mulched and looking nice. So I'm not sure how that would affect us, because then at that point we would own our land, maybe? I'm not sure.
They grandfather, wouldn't they?
If their zoning changes, their current use is grandfathered in that zone.
Okay,
Right, yeah.
okay, and I think that's what we would prefer.
I have a question. You said the present zoning was apartment residential. I thought the present zoning was apartment condominiums.
no, the designation is apartment residential. We don't have a designation that's for condominiums. I believe the initial zoning designation for the area was R4. In my research, that came up. But that designation does not exist anymore. And at the time that it was removed, it was decided by whatever body decided to move it to apartment residential. Obviously, I can't speak to why that decision was made, but that is where it stands at this moment.
So residential includes What?
The apartment residential in district essentially includes a permitted use for multifamily housing.
All types.
Okay, we need your name and address. We need your name and address.
I'm sorry, Marcy Miller,
Question.
165 Kincora Drive.
125 Kincora.
165.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
How come nobody in our development there has got a map like that?
I'll be glad to hand this over to you, sir. You
Well, I
can
mean,
look
there's
at,
about 12, what, 17 or so?
on how many.
They all have a say, you know what?
Right, that's why we're discussing about having a public hearing. This isn't gonna be
Yeah,
decided.
well, I say that should happen.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I say that should happen, we should see, you know.
Oh, yeah, when we have the public hearing, all this will be displayed for you. We're not gonna hide anything. You're the ones that are gonna tell us what you're thinking, okay? I mean, what your inputs are for us to go with this. So, and your name, sir,
Jack Pico,
and your address?
154,
Thank you.
Kincora.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Landon.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, we saw the couple of options you would have for the rezoning request. Next is just the permitted uses for the R3 district, showing you that indeed one-family detached dwellings are a permitted use, as well as common law two-family dwellings, but obviously it's been stated that their intention is the one-family detached dwelling. You have the development standards there as well. From what I've seen from the layout, there wouldn't be much of an issue meeting the development standards for the R3 zoning district. In fact, it looks like the way it would likely be laid out, these development standards would be exceeded in most cases. Larger setbacks, larger area for lots, larger lot widths on the frontage, that type of thing. And that's just a function of how it was planned out initially, how it works out with the remaining land being divided for development. So there's a lot of moving parts with this, obviously, outside of just the zoning reclassification. I've told you there, they need that in order to develop it with single-family lots. There also has to be a process for a subdivision revision. This was initially approved as a planned unit development for condominiums. And in that approval, Planning Commission essentially set forth the use for the properties out there. In order to modify that, per our code, no changes or modifications can be made until Planning Commission has a chance to review essentially the new use of the land out there. So that'll be a part, I think they kind of want to secure the zoning change and make sure that goes through before they go through the process of getting a new plat drawn and going through all that without knowing for sure what the result is. There's additional issues with the infrastructure in the area. At the time that the condominiums were developed, phase one, which is the lower half with the original development, the infrastructure, sewers, roads, whatever, were all accepted by city council. However, nothing ever followed for phase two or phase three. So there's an issue where it needs to be, city council is going to have to accept those as city infrastructure at some point moving forward as a part of this process, likely as a part of the subdivision revision. And there's been we've had city crews out there with cameras in the sewer systems. We've pointed out some issues, and that's something that's, gonna have to be talked about with the developers as to how we get that to the point where you guys can make the decision to officially accept those like we did for phase one, phase two, and phase three need the same thing. And the very last page there is what you see, what I was referring to as the planned unit development that was originally approved by Planning Commission for the development. Obviously, the original owner, there was bankruptcy or something. This whole property's been through a lot of different changes. But that was what was originally approved, and that is the revision process I was talking about that would need to be addressed, after this if it does go through.
Anybody have questions for Landon? Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any way to zone it to address their concerns and take care of Mr. Blitz, or?
I don't think zoning is the answer to that question. I think that would need to be some kind of agreement, like she was speaking to, you know, deed restrictions, something that's recorded on the deed, or, you know, Rob can probably answer that question better than I can. I don't think it's zoning would dictate that.
Place to.
Well, there are two things. One, yeah, the simple answer to your question is yes. Can the city place restrictions in recognition of granting a zoning? The zoning board can make that recommendation that in order to recommend these changes, we want X, Y, and Z. We have that negotiation. There's a second issue in agreement that will take place between the developers and the owners of the undeveloped sections of this and the owners of the old sections of this project. That's a separate issue that the city's not really involved in. If they reach an agreement and they come to us and say, us two sides have agreed to this, and we're willing to move forward with this in those terms, if that's acceptable to the city can incorporate those terms into the zoning change. If they don't have an agreement, you're gonna have two competing interests coming to the zoning board, and the zoning board ultimately could try to sit as some sort of arbitrator and try to hash that out, or tell the two parties to go back and figure it out themselves and come to us with a unified recommendation. So, you know, there's kind of two steps there, and it really comes down to whether or not, you know, you want the zoning board to be sitting as kind of an arbitrator judge between the two competing sides, or you want the two competing sides to figure it out and come to us with a unified plan.
I have a question for Ray. Where would they stand as Tim builds new houses and they stuck to their end of the bargain? The person who, say I buy a house, I haven't built a house there, and I sell my home, the people that move into those homes, they aren't then bound by that, are they? I mean,
If it's gonna be done on the deed, correct?
Right.
It can't be.
You can make it run with the land.
okay, yeah, I didn't know how that worked.
If it's part of the deed restriction, now theirs are condominiums, and I don't know a lot about the thing, but if, as they say, that you own the sticks and stones and not the land itself, then there are ways to restrict that. Obviously, at some point in time, that system has fallen apart in here through bankruptcy, development, whatever, because now there is an actual hard owner of that land separate from the condo association. So while those empty lots may have at one point in time been part of the condo association, it's probably an open question now whether or not they still are part of the condo association, or if they went through bankruptcy, or if they went through tax sale, if there's something that scraped that off of the deed, and whether they currently are subject to those restrictions. That's not a question that the city will answer. That's a question that they'll either hash out between themselves, or the judge will hash it out for them if they don't come to a resolution on their own.
Go ahead.
Sam Bess, 101 48 Township Highway 132, Nevada. As far as the land that you're speaking of possibly opened up to being part of the condos, that would be false. And that we've already went through legal representation to determine
Yeah,
that.
and that's what I'm saying is whether or not that land was ever part of the condo association.
But it never was.
Never was.
Whether it was or not, before, it's not now.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
Right.
Right, and we are aware of that, and so that's where we're sitting with it is, we want them to be able to develop their land. We're not trying to stop them from doing that. What we want is for the consistency in the neighborhood that we purchase our homes in, and looking for something there, because we sign contracts in good faith saying, this is what the neighborhood in the future would look like before all that went down or whatever. And so And Tim did say, look, I can understand where you're coming from, I can build these single-family homes with the, consistent with the neighborhood, so they don't look out of place, and gives that continuity, and so that they're built and maintained in the future, so that everybody's comfortable, and I really feel like that's what they all want. And so, I don't know if that has to be something that's legally drawn up so that everybody understands and everybody feels good, because there are a lot of the residents of Kincora that aren't here, because it's not the voting meeting or whatever, but whatever, we just want to make sure all the residents that have already bought their homes out there under the impression that this is how it's going to be are comfortable with the changes that are coming.
Can I make another note here? Upon subdividing the land and stuff, our initial plan is to make restrictions that's gonna meet
Right.
those, and we'll have that all written out. So those individuals out there can review that, all right? It's their neighborhood, we respect them, and what they, that's their investment as well as ours, and we wanna work together, so. It doesn't seem to be a problem to meet those needs, but yeah, that will be written up, we're gonna get with Tim and stuff, and have that all written up, and that will be part of when we subdivide it, and they can review it over, and if they have questions or concerns.
Yes, sir. Your name and address.
John Miller, 16,
I heard you, John Miller.
165 Kincora.
Okay.
It's hard to talk.
That's okay.
Just piggybacking on what's already been said, there are two associations out there now. Alan here is the president of Association 2, which is on the north end. I'm president of Association 1. There are 5 units up there. There are 12 units down where we are. Our 12 units had their annual meeting a week ago yesterday and voted by consensus that we all agree that we're not arguing, we're not trying to have no building in there. Single family units are fine, but we have all agreed too at that vote that we want something in writing that gives us some assurance that down through the years it is going to maintain somewhat of the same look, that we're not going to have a lot of fences, we're not going to have swimming pools, we're not going to have sheds in the backyards. And we have a whole list of rules and regulations that we signed on as we all bought these properties, hoping that the whole condo association, the whole 41 lots or whatever it is, remain pretty much the same look. And we're still hoping for that to be a part of what happens in the future. So we're really not fighting anything. We're just wanting to know that these restrictions, deed restrictions, whatever they may be, are in place, and we'd like to have them in writing for future generations.
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, you don't want to wait for the voting meeting to come up here and express your opinions. You got to get up here now during this meeting.
Well, to the public hearing.
To the public.
The public hearing, because once we hear the public hearing and then we come to vote at the next scheduled council meeting. So.
Will we be informed when that?
Oh, yeah, that's what we're going to discuss here.
Yep.
I was just going to say, we need to discuss when we got to plan this, because we have to have so much time to notify everybody and.
Landon will put some big signs up and.
So we do need to come back to the next one.
Yes, that's why we're gonna discuss right now when we're gonna need to schedule this, so.
One more.
Yes.
I got a question for Mr. and Mrs. Bass. Are you two open to the possibility of a deed restriction that may have something that says this house can't be painted blue? Or
Well,
such, or are you
can we
guys
refer
against
to
the deed
Tim?
restriction?
Tim's going to be the one that's basically going to be selling it to individuals and buildings, so he's the one that you probably want to talk to about that.
So, Mr. Lutz, are
Yeah.
you open to the idea of the deed restriction?
Yeah, I think we kind of had a meeting up there at the villas, and, we've always been planning on building like a 1,200 to 1,500 square foot ranch house. That's what we always talked about with Best. The lot sizes are not big enough to build too much bigger, so we can't build it, and we're not gonna be building 2 stories in there. keeping the color consistent with the rest of them. I don't have a problem with that, because it looks good with everything
All your
else.
developments are
Yeah.
consistent in color.
Yeah, and,
Makes buying materials easier.
we're gonna not every house, I think there's 28 lots in there, if I'm right. We're not gonna build every house in there exactly the same, but they're all gonna be kind of ranch, look, they're.
Conducive with what's already.
Yeah.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's-
So,
Okay. All right.
The more you guys can figure out.
You're just gonna be the only builder?
Yes.
Well, we want more than one builder, right?
I don't know.
I know you don't.
No, we don't.
Other people
We
do.
don't.
I'm not gonna build one myself.
Okay.
Okay, the more you guys can figure out on your own and bring to us, because you really, Mr. Ratliff said we could be the arbitrators. You don't want us to be the arbitrators. So,
Mr. McKeever?
Yes.
And maybe for Rob, would it be appropriate to have these things in writing, legally done so prior to, not necessarily prior to the public hearing, but prior to either Platting Committee voting to send it to City Council for a full vote, or prior to City Council fully voting on it?
Yeah, I think the sooner those things are agreed upon, the better, but.
I have a question for you. You're shaking your head. I want to know your opinion,
Lynn McKeever, 720 Martin Avenue now.
Lynn. New address.
The plan is to have deed restrictions, covenants, or whatever you want to call them, in the right form. The plan was not to invest all of that money until council decides that they would allow that use. Until council decides that they would allow that use, they're willing to make commitments to you that there will be, and those restrictions and so forth will come to Planning Commission with the modified plat for the subdivision, which this ground was never part of a subdivision per se, as I think all of us are thinking of them. Any split of ground is a subdivision, so I could have 1 acre in a 100-acre field and it's called a subdivision. So I watch the terminology. Gentlemen in Mr. Ratliff's profession have educated me well on that stuff. But the intent is, as I said, to have the restrictions, have the organization. They were talking about an HOA. She said she didn't want an HOA. I don't know what other avenues. Council can only enforce, or the city can only enforce, what the zoning regulations say. Anything else is to be enforced privately. It's just like if you guys don't have a couple members that want to pay their monthly fees, you have avenues to go after and secure that. There would be the same thing. If your governing body decides not to go after those individuals, then they don't have to pay. The city has no responsibility for those to make that pay.
I don't think we were asking that.
No, but it's a similar, how do you enforce it, and how do you continue to enforce it down the road? It's up to the governing body in those associations.
Right, but at this point, if it is put in writing in the deed and they breach their
Yeah.
contract, then yeah, it would become a legal
Right,
issue out
but
there.
you got, the secret is not whether they breach their contract, but who enforces it. And do they care to enforce it?
Oh, we would care to enforce it.
Well, you would, but you would only be able to enforce anything in the home if they agree to allow that in the initial contract. Because right now, just as this private lots can't enforce anything in your condominium, a homeowners association and covenants restrictions does not give you the rights to enforce that on them. It's the members of that subdivision, and those lot owners of that subdivision would have the right to, any one of them, to enforce that, or hire their own attorney to go enforce
Right.
that. And that stuff would be that there's going to be a sizable expense in generating those documents. The plan was to develop them after we know that the zoning would be approved. Because if you tell them no, that they can't do the zoning, why should they invest several $1,000s in legal documents?
And that's fine, because their intent to do so is now a
Mhm.
matter of public record. So
Right,
that's not a
right,
problem.
right. So if you're agreeable with it's their intent to do it, they probably won't get their subdivision approved without bringing those to planning commission,
Right.
which planning commission will approve it, and then it'll come back to
Platting.
the platting and council body as a whole. But it would be more appropriate at that time, it's not appropriate today to have those documents prepared.
This is only to get it.
That's all I want to say, get it in the right
Get
sequential
it in
order.
by a public hearing so that we
Right.
get it to
Mhm.
us, come to plating again to vote on, to change it to the, however we decide, R2, the R3 or the split or however. So that's all we need to discuss.
I'm confused.
You got two of them here.
Okay. Let me get Bruce here and then,
I got a question, maybe Lynn can keep it
Okay.
answer. Scratched on the surface about utilities out there. What's some of the discrepancies on utilities?
There is a hump in the sanitary sewer on the east side of Kincora in phase 1 that's already been approved and into into the vacant ground on the east side of Kincora. That will be resolved and will have to be resolved before the subdivision plat gets approved. I'm not the legal counsel, but Pryor have told me you have 5 people on that line already. So is it a city utility or isn't it? And,
just saying.
but that is one of the questions, but they have investigated, we know where the hump is, we know how big it is, and the worst case is you gotta tear out about 120 feet and relay it.
You got a follow-up. Yeah, question, is that First Energy or American Electric Power in that area?
Probably both. It was at both of them from the get-go when we started that subdivision, and the condo. There was a line that went through there, and it was attempted to get one party to surrender their territorial jurisdiction, and neither party would give on that. So there is 2 utilities running through that place.
And Bruce, there's also, on the west portion of the circle out there, there's also an issue with the storm line that runs between 2 catch basins on the undeveloped portion that also has some humps and some issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah, you got 50 foot in between the 2 catch basins. No, it's only about 30 foot between the 2 catch basins.
I think it's 10 foot that they want to repair.
Mhm.
So do they share the stormwater across the road with insurance at all?
Yes, all that storm drainage, that was, Mr. B now started that process, and the big detention basin on the south side of the road, 19 and 100 out there, is the detention basin for both the subdivision and the condominium complex. That all goes into there, and that's also large enough to develop the rest of the field to the north.
You have
Are they gonna have to are we gonna have to put all new water lines and stuff out through
No,
there? Or
no.
are those already existing?
All existing sewer taps are in, water taps are in, I believe.
whatever we have,
Yeah.
whatever utilities they need, they have to purchase either from us or supply it from themselves.
The water lines, the sewer lines, sanitary and storm, along with the streets and the curb and gutter was all put in, and it was to have been accepted in the past, but at some point with personnel changes and whatever, it died somewhere. We really don't know because other than the minutes that it had accepted it in planning commission, but it never got approved by council.
I can follow up on that. It was back in the Glenn Ackerman era, because we had a moratorium by the EPA that we will not add any more houses or anything to that area at that time until we got more stormwater.
Okay.
Jim.
Sam.
I'm sorry. Thinking of your dad.
I'm following up on the utilities and the infrastructure that wasn't accepted out there. We have council minutes, I believe, on October 24th, 2005, asking for stating that everything was completed out there and it was to be accepted. And then I have a documentation here that's stated on November 4th, which would be 1 week, November 4th, November 2005. After that, with multiple signatures accepting ownership of all that dedication of roadways, right-of-ways, easements out there. So I don't know what this documentation is, that the city of Bucyrus accepted that or not. So it was 1 week after that. It's public record. It was stated that there's issues with the east side road, the sewer drain. I was looking into getting that repaired and basically finding that that road is private by the city, stating that it's private. So who owns it? Who has to insure it? Tax map says it's the city. Recorder's office at the county says it's the city. This documentation says it's the city. So I don't know, really, could somebody clarify that this, what the documentation says? Got the mayor's signature, 4 other signatures stating acceptance of ownership of those utilities and that infrastructure out there, so.
I just graduated high school, so I had no.
I don't know where the communication is, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at this wrong or
He'll
not,
have to,
so.
we'll have to refer to him to investigate, to clarify it.
It's plat book 38, page 30 at the county recorder's office.
I have one more question.
Yes.
So, Rob said they should get together and get their plan in order, prior to the public hearing. I mean,
At the public hearing, they're gonna
at
come.
least a rough draft.
We won't vote at the public hearing.
Okay.
They, just like Lynn said, they can have an agreement amongst themselves, but they're not gonna draw up any legal documents, because it's gonna cost them several $1,000s to do it. And
Right,
they have
I
to present
understand
that to
that.
the planning commission. If we approve it, it goes back to the planning commission. Once we have the public hearing, it comes back to planning, we approve it, it goes to planning commission again. That's when they will present,
That would be that'd be a separate process.
that's a separate process.
That'd be a part of the subdivision revision, which would ultimately be approved by planning commission, that's correct. But from the public hearing, strictly talking about the zoning portion, it
That's all-
comes
that's all
back
we-
to planning committee and then to full council for a vote.
That's all we're gonna discuss. After that, they have to go to the planning commission for the development, all the other, then it comes back to us.
Okay.
So if there's a draft of that proposal at that public hearing, will come out of that public hearing, it will be that next planning commission where you guys will be able to say, look, this is what we think is gonna happen. You can make your recommendations for zoning. however you want to do it.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
We could, just to keep the process flowing, because there's a lot of different steps this has to take, we could go ahead and schedule our public hearing. And in that meantime, their 2 legal parties can be talking to each other, coming up with their stuff and one in writing, and then
30 days right now.
Landon can tell. We have to schedule this 30 days out minimum.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah, we need 30 days legally and about 5 working days for us to process the mailings that go out to the residents and the draft legislation. A month from today is about July 4, which is the middle of the holiday weekend. The week following that is a week of regularly scheduled meetings for council. So ideally, from the perspective of council, July 13 or 14, Monday or Tuesday would be a good fit for a public hearing.
So. How's your schedule, Tim? That's good. Sam, how's yours on the 13th or 14th? What, we usually try to do it around 6 o'clock.
Fine by me?
Sound fine? Does that sound fine to you? That, you can let all your owners, condominium owners know, which would be better, Monday or Tuesday?
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay?
Let's do it Monday, being that we do
Monday.
council on Tuesday.
No, it's the week after.
The week after, oh,
Bring it in
Monday
for
the
a special.
13th.
okay. The week after,
Okay, we'll schedule it for Monday the 13th at 6 o'clock. Landon will get the signs ready and they will be posted out there at your condominium, out towards 19, so people driving by can see it. Right, somewhere, you know where to place it.
I envision placing them inside the Kincora itself, but if we need one out by the road, if you think that's appropriate, I'm happy to.
I think that'd be more appropriate, so the people driving by from the other areas can see it.
And Mr. Chair, the maps that we talked about in the meeting here will be in the mailings for everyone in
Yes.
that residency.
Yeah, you'll get the maps and.
And that's why you can make a big one up here to put it on the easel.
All right, if there isn't anything else for plating, I will adjourn plating at 6:40 and call health and safety.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If you have any questions, don't hesitate
You love
to
me.
contact any of us. We'll be glad to help you.
Email us. That's what I know.
Phone.
Yeah. Take care.
That stuff easy enough without having to just on the computer, like, that signed document that you just.
There's no yes to that courthouse.
Would have been nice if we did.
I'll get that.
Okay.
We don't have anything.
All right, for health and safety and mental order. Car show, street closure. As we received the letter, we read it in council, I'll read it again. It's from the Bucyrus Lodge, number 68, Department Order of Police. Been addressed to City Council from May 20th. Subject cruising with the cops, custom and classic car show. Bucyrus Lodge, number 68, Fraternal Order of Police, Inc. Respectfully request permission to close the following streets on Saturday, September 5th, 2020 for the cruising with the cops, custom and classic car show. We would like to close the 100 block of East Warren Street from 7A to 12A midnight for the food court. Sandusky Avenue from Mary Street to Oakwood Avenue from 12P to 12A midnight. We also would like to close Washington Square, 100 blocks of East and West Mansfield Street, 100 block of West Warren Street, 100 blocks of East and West Rensselaer, and 100 block of East and West Charles Street from 12P to 12A midnight. Your attention and support of this matter would be greatly appreciated. This is a great event for our city. Respectfully, Tracy Keegan. So,
Give it the state.
That's right.
if there's no questions, it's the same closure that we always do. Nothing's been added or taken away, so.
Thank you guys for taking it on.
I know, it's a good time.
We just have to change the date this year.
Normally it would be this weekend.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, can I entertain a motion from?
So moved.
All right, first and second.
We got plenty.
It's still September.
September.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
I'm in favor. You want to be nice before you make, I'm in favor.
Okay, with that, I'll adjourn at 6:43 and public lands is open.
I guess I will call public lands and buildings to order at 6:44 p.m. Up first, we have the Schine Art Park security proposal. We were told about this on Tuesday. Mr. Fankhauser and Mr. Ratliff have figured out that it is okay for Mr. Fankhauser to donate this as long as he doesn't use it as a tax write-off or receive any other kind of financial compensation from it. So, is there any questions? Anybody got any questions about it? It sounds pretty simple. He's gonna provide some cameras to help keep an eye on our murals and keep them from getting vandalized. Well, not keep them from getting vandalized, but at least hopefully catch the people that do.
I make the motion to accept.
Got a motion? I need a second.
Second.
You got a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Did you vote, sir?
Huh?
You got to vote too.
I said aye.
Okay. I didn't hear you.
Gee, very little man.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
A question from the law director, does this require legislation?
I don't think so, we're just accepting a donation.
Yeah. That's good then, that way we can get up before this weekend.
That's right. Get on that tomorrow, would you?
Yeah, right.
Next up was the issue that I had brought up, the bulk water filling station. I did receive a call from Mr. Wagner the following day about the issue with the antenna and Verizon. They are in the process of getting that resolved, getting the new antenna in. They contacted the gentleman that actually built the water plant and put the plans together. He's the one that's been helping them to get the new antenna to get that figured out. But I even explained to Mr. Wagner that I still wanted to have this discussion because I feel like there's maybe another avenue that we could exercise as a way to receive payment or work with these bulk water guys. I don't know if you know, I don't know if it could be integrated, I don't know if it's a possibility, but I know that, you know, there are certain things out there like apps that you can have that are based to where you could set up a payment system through it and they could make their payment through
The
that.
old bulk fill had a keypad that they just pulled up, entered each hauler had their unique code.
Okay.
And then that system kept track of how much they used, and then the utility department would mail them a bill. And it seems like a pretty reliable system.
Okay.
And if there was some way that that could be integrated with the ability for people with credit cards,
right,
then you get the best of both worlds as far as, you know, because the general public that wasn't set up with a keypad code, they weren't able to get water out of the old setup.
Right.
And I just got a text tonight when we started a meeting, one of the bulk guys said
Credit
he's out
cards.
there again tonight and it was down.
Yep.
So,
You got any?
As Mr. Fakehauser knows, I was there last Friday.
Right.
And you know, to me, it just needs that fixed, that particular reliability. And you know, the flow right now, to answer that question, is 125 gallon per minute.
Okay.
Is what's coming through. There is a plan in process to look at a way to further increase that, and there will be a calculation done on that. We have it modeled in our hydraulic program, and we'll give that to Mr. Ernstberger tomorrow.
Okay.
And because he's got to bring a bigger line in from the fire hydrant that sits close by. But the keypad, I'm not sure why that's not working. I know personally, if I go to Duke and Duchess, my card will not read, will not scan, will not go through 3 or 4 times, and I can go down to High Miler and it goes through the first time. So you tell me the difference. I don't know.
Right.
And others do it, and I ran my card through for one of the water haulers Friday night, and it was $1 for 60 gallons, so I wanted to see, and it took twice, and then the system rebooted, and then my card worked fine. And so did his, the other hauler. But I have no idea. I have my suspicion, and I voiced that, and that was addressed on a phone call today.
Okay.
And that is supposed to be corrected.
Okay.
So,
what was your suspicion?
loose wire on the antennas.
The other thing,
You don't.
You guys are purchasing a lot of water on a credit card. I'd be interested in knowing how much credit card fees we're paying to the credit card processing company for.
Right.
You know, if they're purchasing millions of gallons of water, it could be adding up pretty quick.
It would probably be a lot more if it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also too, I pass along, anybody that would like, I have John Ernstberger's phone number. He said that he is more than happy for me to pass that along to you guys. Individually, he will meet you out there, take you a walk around, show you what's going on and everything. So if anybody wants that, let me know afterwards. I'll get you his phone number so you can call and set that up with him. He called me the other day and told me that actually, so. Mr. Drupa.
I just, there's two follow-ups. One is, what are we gonna increase the 125 gallon per minute? What's your modeling telling us that we're gonna be able to increase it to?
I can tell you tomorrow. We're doing it tomorrow.
Oh, you're doing it tomorrow,
Yeah.
What do
Boy,
you,
they're actually digging the line in there tomorrow?
No,
he's
the
modeling
modeling.
hydraulic.
We have the whole hydraulic, all your water lines in town in a computer simulation. And we'll tell you why that, you know, what pressure, if he runs a new line through and where the water is in your water towers, what the flow should be coming out of that. That's why we found initially last year, there was a bottleneck in the system in the bulk water station. It was a device put in there by the manufacturer that limited the flow to no more than 90 gallon a minute. It could not hydraulic go through there, and we ripped that out because we didn't need it, put a spacer, and then we got that. And then the line came in, it went this way, up and over, and then back over, and then up and out. Now it comes in over and up. We took all the fittings and the valves out because they weren't a requirement. The similar system worked at your old plant because the ground at your old plant's approximately 35 feet lower in elevation than the new plant. So therefore, you had more pressure pushing through that line, which would get you more flow. And now we're doing an analysis to compensate for the difference in pressure.
How many
And
gallon per minute was the old system?
That's what I wanted to ask him.
I don't know, I never measured that, but I was told it was very similar to what we have today, right now, presently. I did not record it. I just know what I know today, you know, so. But it should, I'm saying it'll go up, whether it'll go up another 25, 50 gallon, I can't tell you until we do it in the computer. And John called me today and I told him we would have that tomorrow for him.
And just as a follow-up, you know, you had stated that we would go out there individually. The reason I wanted to be a part of the service committee is I want to actually have a meeting out there like we did when we went through the state garage. We actually went out as a group and have everybody, that way everybody, no decision making, no nothing, but be all informative. People can ask questions. People feed off of one another. And I think you learn more of that as a group than individuals.
You could invite the bulk water guys.
And you can invite the bulk water, that'd be great. I mean, so, that's just my comment for your public lands and buildings.
Well, that could also be for your service.
Yeah, but I'm not.
Throw it right back at you.
I'm not allowed to talk next meeting, I guess. So.
We got the information, we gotta wait on him.
Well, I mean, I know we gotta wait for the flow rate and everything, but I think at the same time too, with, you know, this being brought up and everything, with them reaching out and getting the new antenna, getting the, you know, connections taken care of, see how that works, see if it's still intermittent and going down. I know, I think Jeff said it was gonna be at least a week or so before they got that stuff in, so. But I guess at this rate, we'll just, you know, let this go to rest for now, but keep it in the agenda so that way that we can, you know, if this credit card machine's still a problem after this repair, then maybe we do have to go back to the old system of a keypad for those guys and, you know, leave the
I don't
credit card
see
there for
anything.
when it does work and an individual wants to go use it or something, but.
I don't see anything wrong with a keypad system so that the sales are still going and they got an account with us.
Right.
And the water department can stop at any time if they don't pay the bills.
The money we'd save on the credit card fees might actually pay for it.
Right, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, we all know credit card fees aren't cheap, so. Does anybody else got anything? Otherwise, I will adjourn at 6:54.
And I'll just let you finish it up.
You finish it up.
You finish it up, because I have no quorum.
Well, I guess you won't talk about anything then. Does anybody have any public participation?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just a reminder that we have a public hearing at 6 PM on Monday on the rezoning proposal for Copley Avenue, Ohio Mutual.
Yep.
That's at 6 PM. I've received no letters from anyone on that, so that may be a short meeting. So officially, we can schedule the special council meeting at 6:15. We'll meet as soon as the public hearing's over. The special council meeting at 6:15 on Monday will be to consider the two pieces of legislation we could not pass as emergency on
Right.
Tuesday. That's the appropriation, which is debt service from the auditor, and then the floodplain legislation from the law director.
All right.
I make a motion.
Hey, you hold on a minute yet.
Second.
Too late now. We're adjourned at 6:55.
Mr. Keegan wants to
Hey,
know.
before you all get, you got your, Joyce has the, monthly report that she didn't have Tuesday in here, and I was just glancing through it, and it appears we're still meeting our target
Yeah.
for pretty much every account.
Yeah, should've gave those people their raises yesterday.
They've been crying broke for a really long time.
Yep.
Like an insurance.
Yep.
I have to go.
Another.
Nope.